Oh, goody.
Alright, what's up everybody? It is Zombies here again, and today we have patch notes. So we finally got the full patch notes for patch 22.2 here, and as we saw it from the bit of leaked information yesterday, the card changes were accurate. So we got Scabs to 8, Wild Paw to 6, all the other changes. The one thing we weren't sure about was the Pirate Quest. But that looks like it's just been changed, where the middle part of the quest has, or quest line requires 3 pirates instead of 2. Other than that, all the changes for regular cards, ones we saw in the leaks, bunch of battleground stuff. We're going to skip right through that and take a look at the mercenary stuff. So, first, training ground. We get a little info on what the training ground is here. So the training grounds, previously announced as the training hall, has come to Mercenaries. The training grounds is a new space for your village that allows your mercenaries to passively gain experience as you do bounties with your other mercs, play other game modes, or even while you sleep. Just enter the training grounds, select a mercenary you want to train, and leave them there for as long as you want. Check in on them periodically to claim the accrued experience and see how they're doing, or pull them out when you think they're ready to start joining you on adventures. Training ground is going to cost 100 gold to create, with 1 slot for training, and will have a 200 gold upgrade to a total of 2 training slots available. So, kind of cool. I think this is a feature that probably isn't very useful for the super engaged player base, but I think it is a good thing for people who might want to start mercenaries, but don't have any like high level characters. So this is kind of good. I wanted there to be a way for your mercenaries to slowly progress while playing other modes or being AFK and stuff. So this is kind of cool. I wish it wasn't only XP. I do wish there was some passive coin generation here, possibly. I think a little bit of that would go a long way, but unfortunately don't see anything about that. Also, worth noting, nothing about excess coins mentioned, so I imagine that's probably going to be the thing Paul alluded to, the big thing he's working on for hopefully the next patch 22.4, when we're expected to get the mini set in February. But the other big kind of announcements here are we actually are getting 5 mercenaries here. We're going to look at the mercenaries in just a minute, but we're going to come back to them. We're going to read the rest of the mercenary stuff here. So, equipment update for the 5 new mercenaries introduced in this patch. Their 3rd equipment will be earned through completing a specific heroic bounty while that mercenary is in your party. The heroic bounty needed for each mercenary will be listed under the equipment's unlock criteria. This change will not be retroactive, so this will not be changing for the currently released pool of mercenaries, but their current plan is to use this new system for upcoming mercenaries in future patches. They're going to monitor the new system, see how it ends up working, and will make adjustments if needed. On top of that, we are also getting new bounties. So we are getting the Alterac Valley Zone. First time we are actually getting a new zone since release, so that's kind of cool. And as we can see here, there are going to be 6 new bounties. All the bosses are listed here. And yeah, that's pretty cool. It's nice to see a new zone, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the PvE content's like. But now let's take a look at the stuff people really care about, the mercenaries. So first off, we're starting with our legendary mercenary of the bunch. This is Balinda Stonehearth. Her abilities are Flame Dart, deal 10 damage to a character, give them +3 frost weakness, and it is a fire skill. Then there's Frost Dart, deal 12 damage, give them +3 fire weakness, and then Frost Burn. So deal 11 damage to all enemies, either gain +3 frost damage or +3 fire damage. Now that is a choice you do make that is not random. It is much like Malfurion's skill 3, where you can choose to AoE or heal, AoE damage or AoE heal. This, you get to choose whether you want that frost damage or fire damage. And then looking at her equipment, Lesser Fire Elemental, Battlecry, summon a 10-15 elemental that applies +3 fire weakness to characters it damages. And we have Lesser Water Elemental, summon a 10-15 elemental that freezes characters it damages. And then Stormpike Salvation, passive, at the end of each turn, give all your characters +5 health. Also worth noting that she is a human. So this is a really, really cool addition. Bandolina was one of the characters featured in Alterac Valley for the most recent set for Constructed. And I think they did a really cool job of implementing her in Mercenaries in a fun way. I think I really like the design of having both fire and frost and being able to kind of leverage both of those, and then also human typing, right? So she might find a home in some kind of human list, but with how she's geared, I actually expect her more to show up in fire, frost, or just general elemental heavy builds. Really cool unit. I'm really excited to play with her. I'm going to keep my thoughts on all the mercenaries pretty brief here, but if you do want to hear some more in-depth discussion, we are going to be talking about all of these new additions on the podcast tomorrow with a little bit more in-depth discussion. So if you want to hear more stuff about the new mercenaries, definitely check that out when it drops tomorrow. So moving on here, we have Captain Galvangar. So, and these are, by the way, their max stats, I do believe. So 1171 is the stats when fully maxed out. This is our first epic. It's an orc. Abilities: Rending Cleave, 5 speed, attack an enemy. If it has not acted this turn, apply bleed 8 to it and adjacent enemies. So that's pretty nuts. We've seen how the big bleeds can be very strong. But obviously bleed only applies if the enemy hasn't acted this turn, so there's definitely going to be some bonuses for making sure the enemy's slower before you get this off. Then we have 3 speed, Fatal Strike, deal 8 damage to an enemy. It cannot heal for 2 turns. This is a potentially really scary ability. There are a lot of comps that like to leverage healing right now, whether it be the nature, whether it be Anduin, Cornelius. There are a lot of units that really do like healing, and currently there's only one really good anti-healing unit in the game, so getting another good anti-healing skill I think is a good thing. Then Frightening Shout, 6 speed, deal 10 damage to all enemies. If they have acted, the ability they cast gains +3 cooldown. So this is pretty neat. This kind of is something I was hoping we'd see something like this, where it's a benefit for being slower, right? We've already seen something a little bit like this on like Rogers with her AoE, where she damages all opponents that have acted. So we see another kind of similar thing like that here, where you get more bang for your buck on the effect if you're going second or you're going after your opponent. So that's pretty neat. Like seeing designs like that. Now, equipment: Fury of the Frostwolf, passive. Friendly characters have +5 attack. So that's a really strong passive. I don't think it is like Cookie because it doesn't say start of the game, so it's not buffing all your characters. But still, +5 attack is nothing to scoff at. Like, that could be pretty degenerate with some fast attackers like Valera or Grom. So that's pretty strong. Then Drekthar's Boon, Fatal Strike also applies bleed 5. So a lot of support for bleed on him potentially, which could be interesting. And then Deafening Howl, Frightening Shout deals 5 more damage. So that turns it from a 10 damage AoE to 15 damage, which is a pretty significant boost in power. So pretty cool. Did not expect to get any new orcs this time around, so happy to see it. Next up, we have our first dragon. So Sinestra, also our first rare of the bunch. So she is a dragon, 12 attack, 70 health. First ability, 6 speed, Racking Swipe. Attack an enemy. If you control another dragon, bleed 10. That is a huge amount of bleed. So here we got some dragon synergy finally. Dragons did not have any green units unless you count Voon and his summon, but he's not a dragon, so this is our first, green dragon. The second ability, 2 speed, 1 cooldown, Mana Barrier. Restore 50 health to a dragon. Its next ability is 3 speed slower. So this is kind of neat. I don't think we've really seen too much of healing from fighters before, so this is a pretty neat ability. Also gives you a bit of a drawback because 50 is an insane amount of health. So by slowing down the dragon, maybe it gives you a little bit of a trade-off. But again, dragons, at least the ones we have right now, are generally fairly slow. So I don't think they really mind being a little bit slower in exchange for the healing. And then last ability, Twilight Extinction. Restore 20 health to this mercenary. At the end of next turn, deal 30 damage to all enemies. And it's worth noting, Mana Barrier is Arcane, and Twilight Extinction is Shadow. So that's pretty neat. Again, more healing support this time for healing itself, but 30 damage AoE for the next turn is pretty insane. Especially imagine if you set that up with like a Vol'jin for increased shadow damage. That could be really crazy. Looking at the equipment here, we have Hooked Talons, which gives Racking Swipe, additional bleed 5, so upping it from 10 to 15 bleed. That's nuts. That's a crazy amount of bleed. And then we have Mana Brooch. So Mana Barrier restores 10 more health and reduces damage taken by 5 this turn. So this is pretty good. So it turns it to restore 60 health and reduce 5 damage, or reduce damage by 5 this turn for that character. That seems really good if you have a dragon you really want to make sure stays alive until the next turn or heals up, because 2 speed, very fast. So that's pretty interesting. And then Shard of Woe, Twilight Extinction restores 20 more health and deals 10 more damage, but also has +1 cooldown. So instead of being 1 cooldown, it will be 2. This is kind of like the Chain Lightning ability for Brukan, where it has an equipment that makes it a lot stronger. And yeah, that's really powerful, making it 40 health and 40 damage. That's crazy. That's more than half of Sinestra's health. That's not even accounting for super effective damage. So pretty nuts. Pretty happy with this first dragon. It's very different than what I expected, but I'm really excited to try her out. Next up, we have Wrathion. So he is a 1273 human, but don't let that tag fool you. He has some draconic surprises in store for us as well. But looking through his abilities, first ability, Creeping Madness, 8 speed, attack an enemy. Next turn, they must use a different ability or take 20 damage. Fell Spell. So that's pretty neat. I like this kind of design where it is punishing or trying to punish an opponent for spamming the same skill over and over again. I think that's something we could use more of, so I'm happy to see that kind of design make its way in. Next, Tail Swipe, 6 speed, deal 20 damage randomly to the left or rightmost enemy, and this is a shadow spell. So 20 is a fair amount of damage, but random, not quite as good. So we'll have to wait and see how that one ends up doing. And then the most interesting ability here, True Form. Become a dragon, gain +0 health, increased by damage dealt by this mercenary. Transform into Fell Rain 5. So we'll see what Fell Rain 5 is in just a minute after we go over the equipments. First equipment, Chimera of Fear. Creeping Madness also makes the enemy 4 speed slower. So that's pretty significant. 4 speed on top of trying to mess up them spamming the same ability over and over again, or make them pay a cost, in this case 20 damage. is really cool. I like this kind of design, and I'm curious to see how it's going to play out in the meta. Next, we have Black Dragon Scales. Tail Swipe also applies Bleed 5. So again, more support with Bleed. I think that's pretty cool. I think we haven't seen a whole ton of Bleed stuff outside of occasionally with Cookie. So I'm all for getting some more units with Bleed into the meta, because I think it's a really interesting mechanic. And then Horn of Wrathion. True form has no cooldown and also grants +6 attack. So that seems really strong. True form is the coolest part of this mercenary, and we're going to see why now, because our next image here, Wrathion Dragon form, as you see, he keeps his first 2 abilities, but he transforms into a dragon. So goes from human to dragon, and then his skill 3 turns into Fell Rain 5. And what that does is deal 3 damage to all enemies, repeat 4 times. And it starts off of cooldown. This is a Fell spell. So a little bit of Fell support there, which is kind of funny, but really cool ability. I'm liking these AoEs, and I really like the idea of having these kind of transform effects. We've seen a little bit like this before with Natalie, with her Benediction and Anathema. But it's really cool how the unit actually changes type here from a human into a dragon. So I really like that. That's some cool design, and I'm excited to see if they do that with like other characters going forward, because I think it's something that's really cool and fun to do. And then last but not least, oh, and he was our epic, our second epic. So last but not least, we have Loklohar the Ice Lord. And this is our second rare. He is an elemental, 9 attack, 82 HP. First ability, 5 speed, Hailstorm, deal 3 damage to a random enemy. Repeat 5 times. So, and all his abilities are Frost. So that's that actually has the potential to deal a lot of damage when you start thinking about some Frost scaling with things like Jaina or the other new Frost support we got in the set. So that's that could be a potentially huge amount of damage. And he is a protector, the only protector of the bunch. All of the other characters have been fighters, no casters this time, but 5 mercenaries. That's like a huge addition compared to the like 3 or 4. I guess normally we've been getting 4. But yeah, looking at the rest of the abilities, Frost Shock, 9 speed, deal 10 damage to an enemy. Their next ability gives them +5 Frost weakness for that turn. So this is a really cool setup ability. You know, it's obviously very slow, but it doesn't really care that it's slow because it's trying to set up for next turn anyway. So again, I like stuff like this, that it kind of is designed to make you do a more planned out turn for your next turn. So that's some cool design. And then Snowball, 7 speed, deal 10 damage. Damage increases by +5 each time another Frost ability is cast. Resets after use. So this is insane. If you have a Frost focused comp and you're spamming a few, like let's say you use 2 or 3 Frost abilities in a turn. If you just have 1 turn of 3 Frost abilities, that turns this from dealing 10 damage to dealing 25 damage. And it just keeps going up until you use it and it resets. So Loklohar could be a huge nuke if you have a strong Frost comp to go with him. And as we've seen, Frost is pretty good right now. Frost Tyrion's been kind of one of the dominant Frost builds. So I think, you know, there's definitely something to Frost, and seeing it get all this support is exciting. Also, we're getting elemental support, right? So looking down at the abilities here, or the equipment rather, Icy Focus, Hailstorm repeats 4 more times. Wow. So instead of repeating 5 times, it would repeat 9 times. And keep in mind, each one of those 3 random damage hits, I believe gets buffed by frost damage. So imagine you end up hitting a character with that +5 frost weakness, or if you just have some frost damage built up, that's like a crazy amount of damage. So that's a really, really cool ability. Frigid Winds, passive, after an enemy acts, gain +4 frost damage until the end of turn. So this is another really, really cool one where you can kind of punish your opponent for acting way faster than you. Because if all three of their units act before Loklohar does here, he basically just gets +12 frost damage, which is insane. That turns your hailstorm into 5 15 damage hits. So that's 75 damage randomly split in intervals of 15. That's just like, that's insane. And that's with just his frost damage from this if he's going after 3 other mercenaries. So this is a really, really cool ability. I'm excited to see how this one works out. And last, but also certainly not least, he has just such good equipments here. Shroud of the Ice Lord, passive. Friendly elementals have +20 health. So I imagine that also applies on himself. Assuming it does, this is insane, because now we have kind of some potential with things like Ragnaros and Geddon, who are already high HP units to begin with, and now we can just make them even crazier in terms of that bulkiness. It's really cool. I could definitely see some weird fire and ice build going with Loklohar and Balinda here. So really, I think we got some really, really interesting new mercs. Compared to the last launches we've gotten, I think more of these are going to see play, at least in PvP. Because before, we've been getting like one S tier merc, and the other ones are either kind of okay or bad. This bunch seems there's some really good ones. So I'm really excited to see them in the game, try them out. This will all be dropping in the patch on the 25th, so that is this coming Tuesday. And yeah, it's going to be really exciting. If you want to hear some more discussion about the patch and about the new mercenaries, definitely tune into the Fighting Pit podcast tomorrow. We're going to be having a lot of discussion about all the new stuff coming, so really looking forward to that. But that's going to do it for this video. If you enjoyed it, do remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace.